This is not an ordinary video for this channel, rather it's an opinion piece in response to the points raised by Scousecaspaxs on improving the education system. I have been working in secondary schools recently, and whilst I am not a teacher and have not got the wealth of experience that these professionals have, I have however had a glimpse into the other side of a system that we have all been through. Teaching is by all accounts the manifest dictionary definition of a contradiction. For teachers there is a great pleasure to be obtained when pupils finally connect with a task, concept, or even mature in their peer groups. It seems to be a sense of accomplishment only matched by that of passing on a discovery. The idea that your actions have successfully passed on an idea to the next generation or equipped them with the cognitive tools that have previously lacked is intoxicating. However, the demands on a teacher that surround these moments are numerous and bleak. A teacher has to contend with the disaffection of pupils, behaviour issues, meet teaching standards, and in their first 2 years collect evidence that they meet those standards. I agree wholeheartedly with Scousecaspaxs that class sizes are too large. In the work I've been doing over the past few months, I've observed and taken classes, and there is a notable difference between a class of 30 compared to a class of 24. The ability of staff to manoeuvre around the class to address misconceptions of pupils and give the support pupils need is markedly improved, even with the removal of 6 pupils. A teacher is expected to show awareness of something called every child matters. This means that a good teacher would know all the pupils in their class and be able to support their individual needs, be that SEN, special educational needs, behaviour management issues, gifted and talented, or general questions or problems within the subject, and any mixture of those. A lot of schools divide their year groups into 2, just so they can rotate them around the classrooms during the day. If it were possible, ignoring the constraints of money and space, I would think dividing the year groups into thirds would greatly help teachers. An average class size of 20 pupils would make a teacher's job easier to do well. Now I will disagree with Scouse up to a point on the idea that teaching methods should be prescribed and standardised. I can see where she's coming from, with some pupils finding it difficult to deal with a change in methods and style. If you think back to your own time in school, you will no doubt have teachers that you learnt a great deal from, and definitely more so than others. However, a good teacher should already be armed with a range of methods to get an idea across. Using a learning theory called VAC, Visual, Auditory and Kinesthetic Learning, teachers have the idea drilled into them that they should look at a variety of ways of teaching a concept. Granted, this may not always happen due to time constraints and the suitability of a task to a concept. However, with additional time given to teachers, this could be achieved. This brings me to my next point. My first point would require an increase in teaching staff by 1/3. I think that this should be augmented with an additional increase of floating staff to take maybe one of a teacher's 3 lessons with a class a week, to increase teachers' development time. Teachers have something like 2 or 3 hours on their weekly timetable for their own management and development. This time is sorely needed. Any teacher needs to mark work, write reports, monitor pupils, contact parents. However, any teacher who wants to innovate, come up with new materials or ideas in how to deliver a lesson, must do all of that on their own time. An addition to the time that they have to do this will no doubt make it easier for them to do so. I fully support the idea of what is termed independent inquiry and investigative or problem-based learning in schools. In one of the schools I went to, I took a 2-hour AS chemistry class. I turned up with a bag of orange peel and instructed the class that I wanted them to extract limonene from the peel and collect it in a beaker. I left the glassware at the side of the room, and in pairs they had to put together some apparatus to do the job, and I would check it when they were ready. They all enjoyed the lesson, but only one student knew how to set up a distillation apparatus. It was something that the rest of them now know how to do. But by letting them all think about it, the problem gave them more of an idea as to how the solution worked. Maybe even gave them a better understanding of the value of what they were learning. I have to slightly disagree with Scouse again on the point of forcing the extension of schooling, at least to the point that it should not be a forced academic path. This is something that is already happening in the UK. A greater number of vocational courses are available for those pupils who want to take them. I would say that pupils should stay in education until the age of 18, but that it is their choice as to an academic or vocational programme of study, this being in the last 2 or 3 years. No pupil should be forced into a vocational course, however. It is also my opinion that schools should be secular in nature. In primary schools in the UK, it is law that they undertake acts of worship of a broadly Christian nature. Although parents may opt to remove their child, such action only serves to highlight their child as different. This is not a good thing for some pupils. Schools should educate pupils. Places of worship should serve parents' or pupils' religious desires. Secondary schools do not have this legal requirement. However, there are many faith schools in the UK, and their practices can be worthy of scrutiny. This is second-hand information to me, so make of it what you will. But Catholic schools do not provide standard sex education. One story I heard of a trainee science teacher on placement at a Catholic school being asked by pupils about contraception. The trainee answered their questions, and the lesson carried on. At some point after this, the trainee was required to complete their placement elsewhere, due to the school's complaints to the training centre about this incident. A friend of mine told me that whilst they were at a Catholic school, they were shown a film of abortions taking place. The film was called The Silent Scream, and having watched it myself, it is clearly a propaganda piece and has no place in a school outside of a media studies class. All schools should provide pupils with the information and skills they need to get through life. It is up to the pupil to judge whether or not to use it based on their own views, not those imposed by propaganda and scare tactics. Lastly, and rather oddly, I would like to see a standardised curriculum for RE, religious education. In contrast to RI, religious instruction, RE should serve as an introduction to different groups' views and practices, to help the pupils understand why different people have different customs, views and dress. Also, explain the social issues that these groups disagree upon. The reason I say this needs to be standardised is due to recent criticism in the UK of different schemes used by different schools. I think an approach should be taken where more conspicuous faiths are studied, such as Christianity, Islam, Hinduism and Judaism, as already seems to be the case. However, these should be augmented with an explanation of secularism, atheism and agnosticism. Not even as a module on their own, but to clarify their meaning, and especially with the case of secularism, their importance. Having examined some of the resources of one school myself, I found it also notable that the words atheist, atheism and secular were not in any of them. Anyway, I encourage anyone else with an opinion on the matter to post a response to Scousecaspaxs. I'm sure there are a lot of interesting things to be said.